The myth is if I don't have sex with my man and, get him up regularly, he's going to get it somewhere else. But that is in my experience, that's the smallest category reason why people cheat. If you are totally unavailable or totally shut down, then sometimes there'll be some infidelity because of that. But that's a very small piece of the pie.
Hello, Heal Squad. Welcome back. Glad to be back with you right here in our West Coast studio. Really excited for our chat today with a longtime friend and friend of the show, Dr. Laura Berman. We're going to start with our quote of the day, though. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding new ways to love and connect. Ooh, that's from Dr. Laura Berman, guys. Heal Squad, I hope you guys are ready to feel connected and loved because we've got Dr. Laura Berman here. Like I said, she is back and you already know her because she is our go-to for sex, love, and relationships as the normal. But she's got a new book we're going to talk about. She's already a New York Times bestselling author, a podcast host, and has spent the last 30 years devoting her career to helping others learn to love better and be loved from a mind, body, and spiritual perspective. She's got this new book I was just mentioning that's out and new resources on grief and healing. We're going to get into all of that, plus so much more, like healing emotionally, sexual blocks manifesting even during sex. My mind blew. We had her at a heal event. If you are not part of the inner circle in the Patreon, you guys definitely missed out. We did a very special session with Dr. Laura where she really explained to us how to manifest even during sex. So we're going to get into that. It is possible, she says. And I just want to warn everyone before we get started, this episode is a little spicy. So just be aware of who's listening with you. We are going to dive right in. So, Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. I'm happy to be here with you always.
I'm so excited about your new book, Sex Magic, because I do feel like, that is a category we haven't worked on manifesting in. And I think that that is something that I didn't even think of. You're always manifesting. For me, I'm manifesting health and wealth and love and, safety and all the things that I want, not thinking about it in that category. Like that category is just like a different thing, I thought. So I mean, maybe we just dive into, well, we'll get to that. I think maybe we'll get to manifesting, whatever it is during sex. It's a very interesting conversation. But we have talked about manifesting our dream partners, identifying our love languages. I think that was a really helpful episode we did. And so how do we continue the excitement in a relationship, and how does sex play a role in that?
Yeah, great question. And that's really honestly why I wrote Sex Magic. I mean, this is my 10th book, and my 9th exclusively about sex, although all my books, while exclusively about sex, are about a lot more than sex because there's a lot more to sex than the physical act. But this book is really like I jokingly but seriously call it the antidote to bedroom boredom, because what was happening, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years and everywhere I go, everywhere I speak, and I've spoken around the world, even in different, different countries than you'd think it would be primarily in America, but everyone, how do I keep the spice alive in a long-term relationship? And so for so much of my career, and so many of my books have done this, and I'm still a big fan of it, I would give you all kinds of tips, tools, toys, role plays, all those things, fantasies, I can books of them about how to keep the spice alive. But eventually that gets familiar too.
Yeah, it just seems like so much work. I'm already overwhelmed hearing all of that.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And what happens is, even if you do some of those, eventually after doing it a couple of times, those become familiar too. So I started really asking myself and others who were asking me this question, and my clients and my couples I work with, what is it that you're really looking for when you say, how do we spice it up? How do we keep like what is, because for me, and you know this, everything we want to manifest, everything we want to create is because we want the feeling we're going to get when we have that thing, that job, that partner, that baby, that house, that career, whatever that is. We're not necessarily conscious of it, but what we want because of how we imagine we'll feel when we have it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started saying, okay, well, so if you had all the spice you wanted, how would it feel? How would it feel? And what it all came down to is that we're looking for that feeling of intense excitement, that intensity of connection, of pleasure, of excitement that easily comes with novelty and with a new relationship, right? But in a
Yes.
long-term relationship, familiarity, when we move from that infatuation stage that lasts anywhere from 3 months to 3 years, depending on how quickly you commit. Once we move into attachment, then it's a softer, sweeter kind of love, but not very intense.
Yeah.
And it can easily lose the excitement. And that's why so many are turning to porn or threesomes or open relationships or going in all these directions, because they're looking for that intensity in all the wrong places, which is where sex magic comes in.
Okay, let's talk about some of the issues, okay?
Okay.
Because as you were talking, I was thinking about so many different things. Like, is in this day and age, and I was listening to, I don't know if it was a TED Talk or a video of this therapist who was talking about how monogamy really doesn't work anymore. And it kind of made sense. And I might be adding some thoughts of my own in here that I mean, I always kind of wondered whether it was something that made sense because you don't, it's like a dog. A dog doesn't want to pee on the same fucking tree every day. Like I always say to Kevin, I'm like, I need to pee on a new tree because he would want to go to
Yeah.
the same restaurant. He'd want to do the same thing all the time. And I'm like, I need to pee on new trees. That was my way of explaining because he knew how dogs needed to go a different route and explore new areas. And so I
Different smells.
yeah. So I feel like that's like relationships. I always kind of wondered myself, even having parents who were together forever, if monogamy really made sense, especially where men have an external organ that controls them. We have an easier time, I believe. Now, I know that women cheat and women are very horny and all that stuff too, but men have an external organ that is very difficult to control because it goes I'm alive, here I am, and I need something. So, and maybe because we've also as women been taught to like be, very careful who we give this to. Like maybe we've trained ourselves to like
Mhm.
hold it together better than men, let's say. But, is monogamy in this day and age really possible when you have the internet that's made it so accessible to have porn and sexting and all of the things that didn't exist back in the day? Back in the day, a man would cheat with somebody he worked with
Mhm.
and the wife would find out and vice versa. The woman would maybe cheat with somebody she was on a trip with or something. So that's a very long-winded question, but I do wonder about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's so many ways we can go at this. So let's just start by saying that the quick answer is yes. You can, you absolutely can be successfully monogamous for life. However, there are lots of reasons why it does not come naturally to us, and I'll get into that in a second. And that the number one predictor for infidelity is opportunity. So what you say is really important, that with, and even for women, we've seen, in the past, I don't know, since the 1990s, where women really started diving deeply, more deeply than, and now more than ever, more women are working than men. But even when this was first starting in the early 2000s and in the late 90s, as women really were getting out there and having huge careers, we saw a tremendous increase in infidelity, because with financial independence and opportunity, the gap between men cheating and women cheating has been shrinking. But
Wow.
the reasons people cheat are rarely about the physical act of sex and being horny. It's usually about something else. But let's put a pin in that for a minute, because
Okay.
we could go down a deep rabbit
Interesting. So
hole.
my theory of the external organ isn't really going to be backed up.
Well, I mean, if he's like 18 to 25 or 30, maybe, you know,
Okay.
like, but and I know this isn't what you're trying to do when you say that, but I think it's minimizing men and their capacity for self-control and judgment when we, this old adage, they're led around by their dicks, like that's, am I allowed to say, I can curse here, right?
Oh, I never heard that before, but that's basically what I was saying. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean it. I mean, yes, I have, maybe a little bit of judgmentalism in me for it. I'm creating words
Okay.
now too.
That's okay. Judgmentalism is good. All right. So let's just talk about, I love this stuff. I come from a background of evolutionary psychology and how we evolved as men and women. I like to think of it as the masculine and the feminine, because I'm not even talking about gender, but let's just talk about cavemen for a minute. What scientists have determined and evolutionary anthropologists have determined is that we really evolved, and it's still in our DNA today, to be serially monogamous. So what scientists believe is that we created something that they, sort of named the sex contract. So when we were cave people, men were the hunters, women were the gatherers. And when we started walking upright, this is really fascinating to me, so I'll geek out for a second. But women's pelvises became more narrow. In order to walk upright, to stand up, our pelvises had to get more narrow. So babies had to be born more small and vulnerable than, let's say, an ape, where it can just hop on the back and the mama can go on with her business. And, it's a little bit more advanced, the baby. A newborn baby, a human newborn baby could not do that, right? And the reason for that is because there is, from an evolutionary perspective, primarily comes down to the pelvis, which is so bizarre to me. But anyway.
Wait, so we were on all fours before?
Yeah, we
How come I didn't know
evolved
that?
from apes, right?
But I always think of apes as standing up.
But they only stand up occasionally, right? When they're pounding their chest.
Yeah.
Usually they're on all fours.
That's so funny. I guess I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so as we had our babies earlier, then we have a whole period of extreme vulnerability where we can't protect ourselves. We have this infant. We were very vulnerable. And so the theory is that this kind of sex contract evolved where, in caveman terms, the woman basically said to the man, look, I can guarantee you I am only going to have sex with you so you can be sure that this baby that you're protecting and helping to feed and helping to, provide for both of us, you're investing in your gene pool. Okay, so this is definitely going to be your genes that you're protecting. I won't have sex with anyone else. In exchange, you don't invest your resources anywhere else. So we are a unit.
This is what the cave people said, like telepathically, or like
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Energetically.
This was the evolutionary agreement that started being made. And then and what they found through all the, I mean, there are books on this about all the anthropological and archaeological evidence and how it supports and whatever else. I'm just sort of summarizing in my layman's effort here of what happened. So basically, what they would do is they would form these pair bonds where they would only focus on each other until the baby was like 2 or 3 years old, could hop on the mama's back or walk alongside her while she went about her gathering and went back to regular life. And then they would split up and go on to new pair bonds. And what was so fascinating to me is when they've looked at divorce rates around the country and the world, they have found that the highest divorce rate happens when the youngest child is about 3 years old. Isn't that cool?
Whoa, I'm sure you guys heard my jaw crack because it just fell on the floor. Wow.
Right? So when monogamy for life was created, it was when farming started. And it was a business arrangement, like same thing. We're going to come together. We're going to have kids that are going to work on the farm. We're going to all invest on this farm. And it was also a religious institution. And when Monogamy for Life was created, we didn't live, 50 was the equivalent of 95 today, right? So
Great point.
we didn't live that long. So Monogamy for Life was like what? 20, 30 years max. And that was like a really long time because there was no penicillin and people died much earlier than that. So today,
Yeah, so by the time you needed spice, it was over anyway.
right.
Oh, man.
And also, people weren't really monogamous. I mean, people have cheated since the beginning of time. But long story, it was a religious institution and it was an economic institution. Now, Monogamy for Life is, could be as long as 70 something years because our expected lifespan is 100 if we are healthy and thanks to modern medical technology. So, and if people, listen to your show, they're probably going to live a long time, if they're following a healthy lifestyle. So Monogamy for Life is a long ass time. But it's absolutely possible to have a profoundly connected, intimate, intensely satisfying and exciting connection. And that's what the book is about creating that, whether you're single or in a relationship. So that was a very long-winded answer to your long-winded question, but I think those things are important for people to understand where it comes from.
So we have these agreements, and then, if 3, everybody would separate, and that's kind of the pattern that you're seeing now. But when we look at, let's say, like modern times, like my parents' generation, your parents' generation, was it easier for them to be monogamous than it is now with the internet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, one of the biggest predictors of infidelity is opportunity. That's why you see a lot of, rock stars or superstars are cheating all the time. Not, much more so. The incidence of cheating among them is much greater than, let's say, your average guy who goes to a 9 to 5 every day at his company, because they are having women or men, and as the case may be, throw themselves at them 24/7. So one of really the biggest predictor of infidelity is opportunity. But underneath that, there are, it's hard when people, especially for those people who are having these gorgeous beings throw themselves at them nonstop. But even for them, there are many who don't cheat. It really, what I have found, especially in your average person, and what the research has shown as well, is that cheating when it happens is more often a symptom than a reaction to opportunity, especially, even online. The opportunities are now there for all of us. That is true. Not just with porn and with these sexting apps and porn that you can interact with, these rooms where the women or men, but it's typically women, are kind of interacting with you live. So that's like a step between watching porn and, physically being with someone in person. But then we also have social media, which is like a high school reunion or a college reunion on steroids. So that one that got away or your old high school crush, people are reconnecting with. So you're feeling lackluster in your relationship, you're feeling bad about yourself, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling disconnected, you go online, and you remember how you felt when you were 19 and with this person, and you say, how are you doing? It's been so long. And then it moves into, I'm not really happy in my life and in my relation. My wife doesn't really understand me. And then it goes from there. So we see Facebook is actually cited in 1 in 5 divorces now because of that.
Oh my God. So now we have to be paranoid if our husbands are reconnecting with old flames.
Yeah, I have that rule. I mean, I've had that rule with my husband from the beginning. Neither one of us are friends with our old flames.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't have any old flames technically because
you've been with Kevin since you were 12.
Yeah. But he's in touch with people from his past, and now, whatever, we'll have to deal with that. But my other question is, you talk about the reasons why there's infidelity. I think a lot of times it seems like it's a problem in the relationship, And I'm sure there is problems in the relationship, but aren't there people who just are serial cheaters who come into relationships and they already have a format?
Yeah. Yeah, there are people who come into a relationship already with that, and there are a lot we could talk about some of the reasons.
Mm.
There are people who maybe don't have a pattern of that, maybe didn't cheat or maybe one, in high school or something, did something stupid, but they wouldn't necessarily call themselves someone who cheated or see themselves as ever anyone who ever wanted to cheat and intended to be monogamous. But there is a direct correlation with, it's just like alcohol or drugs or any other activity that doesn't serve your health or well-being. We do those things to distract ourselves from our pain. And sex is one aspect of infidelity. But for a lot of people, it's not even, I mean, I work with so many couples where, in so many couples where there's been infidelity. And so often, the guy is more often than not, I don't mean to stereotype because women cheat too, but more often than not, the one that has cheated. And very often, the sex is the least of it. And his partner is totally sexually available, and even their sex life is great when they have it. It's that it's the chase, for instance. It's the convincing himself that he's still desirable and still virile and still wanted. It's the need for that dopamine hit because he hasn't consciously really recognized that he's not doing what he needs to do with his life or emotionally doing the work to really source where his true peace and value is found. Or he's someone who externalizes his value. So he needs that feedback from beautiful women, for instance, telling him that he's wanted and desired, and the sex he could take or leave in a lot of cases.
Wow. So what you're saying is um they have emptiness in categories that they haven't dealt with. And so
Yes,
it's not as much about the partner because I think the partners want to blame themselves
of
and think,
course.
what did I do wrong? And yet it's within that person that they're empty in some category. They haven't dealt with it, don't have the tools, don't have the understanding that there's something that they're missing. So they're trying to
Mhm.
get it from these other places.
Both end. I would say it's almost more often that what you're saying, and sometimes, and I would even say often, it is not that even that the partner isn't sexually available to them. So that, like, the myth is if I don't have sex with my man and get him up regularly, he's gonna get it somewhere else. And
Yeah.
okay, fine. But that is in my experience, that's the smallest category reason why people cheat. Yes, if you are totally unavailable or totally shut down, or in some cases, he or she has a very kind of atypical, unusual sexual need that he hasn't either told the partner or the partner isn't willing to meet, then sometimes there'll be some infidelity because of that. But that's a very small piece of the pie. But there is a larger piece of the pie where there's been sort of really bad communication and I see this a lot with men. They have a partner who is really kind of self-sufficient and really busy or has a ton of kids and and they're just so caught up in life, and the woman is thinking, we're in this together, we're a team. And so she's just in survival mode and thinking everything's okay. He is feeling disconnected or browbeating, or they haven't really been investing, and neither of them investing enough time and effort in their emotional connection and tenderness and appreciation in quality time together. And so it just kind of raise the fiber of the connection between them just enough so that when someone at work or someone online starts coming in there and telling them how they are the best thing since sliced bread, and
Yeah.
I see you and I want to know everything about you and I want to give you my undivided attention, that becomes extremely seductive.
Yeah, we see that in the movies all the time.
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, you're a genius, you're this, you're that. They want to hear all these things. But what you're saying is so brilliant. Obviously, you're brilliant, but what I want to take this to is where I think you were kind of going is the woman, first of all, just, gives birth, has to raise the kids, is the one who's really generally in charge of so much and
Yeah.
having to have a career and bring in income. So the woman sometimes pushes into more masculine energy.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really hard to stay feminine when you literally have mile long to-do lists, so many obligations and responsibilities. Talking about like, and I've been in a relationship my whole adult life, like talking about dealing with the emotional fibers of your relationship. How the fuck do you even get there? You don't have time. I know, Patty, you're married in the booth. You can jump in if you want. How do you get to the fucking emotional shit when you don't even have time to even see each other and speak? Like this is, and if you have more than one kid, it's crazy hard. I'm sure. I don't have that situation, but I can imagine. So then now, and I've been to Tony Robbins events where he's talked about masculine and feminine. So now the woman pushes into masculine. It almost to me feels like it's not that the male goes into feminine, but the male is missing some of that energy. It's almost like coming over here, let's say to my side, and they don't have anything. And technically, we know this, the guys generally have their role. They go to work and they come home and watch Sports Center. Sorry, I'm definitely being very judgmental here. But they don't have the same amount of things to worry about. As a
Yeah.
modern woman, so that our man doesn't cheat on us, we have to get our hair down, we got to get our Botox, we got to get our nails done, we got to go to the gym, we got to do all these things, we got to be perfect, and we got to raise the kids, and we got to work. I mean, I used to say this all the time, and then America Ferrera said it perfectly in Barbie, in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
That is why it's so hard for a woman today, because you can't get there. So when you hear from the man that you're so masculine, you're like, well, wait, what do I do with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're everything you're saying. I totally understand. I would challenge you a little bit on. I think you're right that that's what women believe, that they have to, stay fill themselves with Botox and work out and hair and nails and everything else. I would say half of that is unnecessary. At least half of that is unnecessary. And you and I have talked about this. Half of it is for other women.
Totally.
It's not to keep your man interested. Okay.
Agreed. But then I remember we talked about that in the heel event. But let me add the caveat that I thought about later.
Yeah.
And here's the caveat I thought about later. When you hear of men cheating, right?
Yeah.
They say it's not about the sex. They say they don't care about like the looks or whatever. Why is it always young, hot women?
Because
That
they
makes the other
have.
woman feel like she needs to stay hot or
Yeah.
he's going to cheat.
That it is often young, hot women. It is often, and I hear this from women all the time. That is who he cheated on me with. She looks just like me and I'm 55, or she's more unattractive than me,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So I think both are true. And the reason I think men get with much younger women is for this because their ego is extremely fragile and they're externally referenced. So they're a guy who really needs that external approval from the world and they find their value in that. So having a young woman on their arm is a status symbol and they can control her. They are looked up to. They are admired. They
Mhm.
are godlike. A woman their own age is seen, is like, get over yourself, sort of. But a younger woman is, really enamored often, especially if she's attracted to him. So that can be extremely seductive. But back to what we were saying, that she I mean, women do have to do a lot more in the home and with the kids, even when they're both working outside the homes. Um, and even if they aren't both working outside the home, she's still working harder than he is. But and what you said about the polarity is so important. And I spend a lot of time in sex magic helping to understand this dynamic between the masculine and feminine energies. And by the way, you don't have, the man doesn't have to be in his masculine and the woman in her feminine. You can have a successful relationship in reverse, where the man is more in his feminine and the woman is more in her masculine. But when the woman starts to move, and I always, we can go more deeply into what the masculine and the feminine is, but really the best, easiest, quickest way to describe it is through this metaphor I love, which is like the masculine is the banks of the river. It contains, it directs, it creates safety, it creates sort of the container for the feminine. It's directive. The feminine is emotional and flowing and creative. So the feminine is like the river, and the masculine is like the river banks, right? And so when the woman, if you have a relationship where you started out where he's in his masculine, she's in the feminine, and now out of what she imagines is necessity, and often is necessity, she's stepping more into that director role, that controller role. And it's often a distorted masculine, because there's a healthy masculine and an unhealthy masculine, right? So often when we women, think 80s, when women first went to Wall Street, right? We had shoulder pads, we were spitting, we were talking like God, we were emulating men in order to be accepted, because we didn't have a model of empowered feminine. And so there are these archetypes that often get distorted. And so what I see is very often women, in an effort, because they're so overwhelmed and so stressed, they get really controlling and they get really demasculinizing. They get really critical of their partners, or they get really controlling, or they keep telling him, step up, I need you to help me, go load the dishwasher. And then he loads the dishwasher, and then she opens it up, you did it wrong, and pulls everything out and reloads it, because she's so stressed, right? She's just like angry and stressed. And so that is partly on her, but it is partly on him, because a woman can step more into her masculine. And I did this all the time when my kids were small. But my husband is so solid in his masculine energy. He was like, like he would not let me. He would just be like, no, like, you do not talk to me that way. That is not okay. Like, I am here helping you load the dishwasher. Here, do you need a hug? Do you need to come in here?
Ooh.
And do you need me to contain you? He didn't say that. He didn't even know that that's what he was doing. But that's what you need, right? You need both. So it's not just like the woman, you got to stay in your feminine so he can be in his masculine so he doesn't cheat on you. He has to really stay, if he is in his masculine, he has to stay in a really healthy, containing, conscious masculine. And so for a relationship to last the distance through all of this struggle, you have to be so committed to your own personal growth. You have to take responsibility for your own stuff, and you have to constantly be stepping into your healthy power and lovingly holding each other accountable in order to do that.
Wow. That is a lot. I'm going to stop us right here. We're going to come back tomorrow, guys. Dr. Laura is going to be back answering more sexy questions, like what you do when your sex drive is low, and how to make sex feel less awkward, how to get more sexual energy, how to manifest while you're having sex. And I think we're going to continue our masculine, feminine talk a little bit more as well. In the meantime, friends, be nice people, make good choices, share this episode, and be present. Hey, Heal Squad. We have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.